catalyze.
She casa.
Oh dear, I can't say that right.
Finest flour, fresh tools. Get your supplies here.
They are beautiful beads, a lovely color.
"There's room in my heart for you this Christmas," he said to the Apache mother, fleeing with her child. December 19, the 1883. Bitter Creek, Colorado Territory. The blood left a trail in the snow. Ayanna did not look back. Looking back meant slowing, and slowing meant death, not just hers, but Koda's, and that was something she would not allow. Not while breath still moved through her lungs. Not while her legs could carry her forward through drifts that reached her thighs. The bullet had torn through the flesh of her left shoulder 2 miles back when Hollister's men had found their camp near the frozen creek. She had been heating water for Koda's morning meal. The first shot had shattered the clay pot. The second had found her. But she had run. Grabbed Koda, pressed his face against her chest so he would not see, and run. Now the world was white and red, and the gray of approaching dusk, and somewhere behind her hoofbeats pounded through the silence like a second heartbeat, one that wanted to stop hers forever. Koda whimpered against her neck. 5 years old. Small for his age. His father's eyes dark and deep as mountain pools. His father's courage too, though he did not know it yet. "Shh, little one," she breathed in Apache, the words frosting in the air. "Mother is here." But Mother was bleeding. Mother was slowing. And the hoofbeats were growing louder. She crested a ridge and saw a cabin, small, square-shouldered against the slope. Smoke rose from its chimney. A lamp burned in one window. Signs of life. Signs of warmth. Signs of a choice she did not want to make. Going to a white man's door meant danger. They had learned to fear her people, and fear made men cruel. But staying in the snow meant certain death for Koda, and uncertain death was better than no chance at all. She stumbled down the slope, her moccasins slipping on ice hidden beneath fresh powder. The cold had stopped hurting hours ago, a bad sign she knew. When cold stopped hurting, it meant the body was giving up, surrendering. She would not surrender. The cabin grew closer. 20 yards. 10. 5. Her legs gave out at the door. She fell against it, her good arm wrapped around Koda, her wounded shoulder screaming as it struck wood. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. Darkness swam at the edges of her vision. Mother Koda's voice, small and frightened. "Mother, wake up." But she couldn't. The darkness was pulling her down, and the last thing she heard before it swallowed her completely was the sound of a door opening and a man's voice saying something she couldn't understand. Before we continue, comment the number 1 if you want to see what happens next. And don't forget to subscribe for more Wild West stories. Silas Brennan had not expected company. He never did. The nearest town was 11 miles downhill through rock and snow. The nearest neighbor had packed up and left in autumn, heading south to warmer country. The cabin stood alone, and Silas preferred it that way. He was 38 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, with the weathered face of a man who had spent more years outdoors than in. Gray threaded through his dark hair at the temples now new since Martha died. The lines around his eyes were deeper. The calluses on his hands were thicker. Everything else felt hollow. 2 years since the fever had taken her. 2 years of silence and routine, and watching his daughter Ellie grow up without a mother. 2 years of standing at the window each morning, staring at the grave he had dug with his own hands, wondering how many more winters he could do this. He had been adding wood to the fire when the sound came, something heavy striking his door. Not a knock, an impact, like a body falling. Silas grabbed the Winchester from above the door and moved carefully, one hand on the latch, the other on the trigger. In this country, unexpected visitors meant trouble. Always had. He opened the door. The woman lay crumpled on his porch, dark hair spread across the snow like spilled ink. She was native Apache by her dress. A child clung to her, a small boy with terror in his eyes and tears frozen on his cheeks. And there was blood. So much blood spreading beneath her, staining the white red. Silas's first instinct was to close the door. An Apache woman on his porch would bring questions he didn't want to answer. The town already whispered about him, the strange widower who kept to himself, who had once worked as a translator for the army, who some said was too sympathetic to the Indian cause. But the boy looked up at him, and Silas saw his own daughter's eyes in that small face. The same fear, the same desperate hope, the same wordless plea, "Help us, please." Papa Ellie's voice from behind him. He turned. She stood at the top of the stairs in her nightgown, 8 years old, with Martha's brown hair and his own blue eyes. Too serious for a child. Too quiet. "There's a lady hurt, Papa. And a little boy. I see them. Are you going to help?" The question hung in the cold air. Simple. Obvious. The kind of question only a child could ask without understanding the weight of it. Silas thought of Martha. What she would have done. What she would have wanted him to do. The answer came immediately clear, as her voice had once been gentle as her touch. Help them, Silas. That's what decent people do. He set down the rifle. "Go get blankets," he told Ellie. "All of them." And put water on to boil. The woman was lighter than he expected, but carrying her was still difficult. She was dead weight unconscious, and the boy wouldn't let go of her hand. Silas managed to get her inside, laid her on the bed in the spare room that had once been Martha's sewing space. He hadn't been in here since she died. Couldn't bear to see the half-finished quilt still stretched on its frame, the thimble still sitting where she'd left it. Now another woman lay where Martha had sat, bleeding onto sheets that hadn't been changed in 2 years. The wound was bad. Through and through, but high on the shoulder near the collarbone. If the bullet had been 2 inches lower, it would have torn through her lung. She would have been dead before she reached his door. "Is she going to die?" the boy's voice. He had crept close while Silas examined the wound, stood now at the bedside with his fists clenched and his jaw set, trying so hard to be brave. "Not if I can help it," Silas said. "What's your name, Coda?" "That's a strong name. I'm Silas." "That's my daughter, Ellie." Ellie appeared with blankets, stacked them on the chair, then moved to stand beside Coda. She was taller than him by several inches, But something in the way she positioned herself said protector, not superior. "Your mama's going to be okay," Ellie told Coda with the absolute certainty of childhood. "My papa knows medicine. He fixed my arm when I fell from the hayloft." Silas didn't correct her. A broken arm and a gunshot wound were not the same thing, but the boy needed hope, and hope was sometimes more important than truth. He worked through the night. The bullet was gone, clean exit wound, thank God, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. Silas packed the wound with clean cloth applied pressure until his arms ached, then changed the packing and started again. He'd done this before, in the war, when medical supplies ran short and men died for want of simple bandages. He'd sworn he'd never do it again. Life had a way of breaking promises. Around midnight, the woman's fever spiked. She thrashed, cried out in Apache words Silas remembered from his years with the army fragments of meaning that cut through the fog of time. "Stop. No. Please. My child." "She's looking for Coda," Silas said. The boy had refused to leave. He sat in the corner now, wrapped in a quilt Ellie had brought him, his eyes fixed on his mother's face. At Silas's words, he moved forward, took his mother's hand. "I'm here, Mother," he said in Apache, then repeated it in English, accented but clear. "I'm here." "Safe." The woman stilled. Her breathing eased. Her hand, which had been clawing at the sheets, relaxed around her son's fingers. Silas watched something shifting in his chest. An ache he'd thought was dead, stirring back to life. Dawn came gray and cold. The storm had passed sometime in the night, leaving the world draped in fresh white. The temperature was dropping 10 below, maybe colder. The kind of cold that killed. The woman was still alive. Her fever had broken near 4 in the morning, and she slept now, real sleep, not the unconscious thrashing of before. Color was returning to her cheeks. Her breathing was steady deep. Silas sat in the chair beside the bedbone, tired but unable to sleep. Coda had finally succumbed to exhaustion around dawn, curled up at his mother's feet like a puppy. Ellie had gone to her own bed hours ago, though Silas had heard her get up twice to check on their guests. Their guests. When had he started thinking of them that way? Movement from the bed. The woman's eyes opened dark, deep, aware. She took in the room in one sweep, the unfamiliar walls, the strange man sitting beside her, her son sleeping at her feet. Her hand moved under the blankets, searching for something. "Your knife is on the table," Silas said quietly. "I cleaned it. Didn't touch your other things." Her eyes found the small pile he'd made her knife, a leather pouch, worn soft from handling a beaded necklace. The tension in her shoulders eased fractionally. "Who are you?" Her English was careful, accented, each word chosen deliberately. "Silas Brennan. This is my ranch. You collapsed on my doorstep last night. The men, no one came after you. Storm covered your tracks, probably. They'll have had to find shelter themselves or freeze." She processed this. Her hand moved to her shoulder, found the bandage. "You did this, yes." Why, the question was sharp, suspicious. She had expected cruelty, he realized. Had prepared herself for it. Perhaps had experienced it before. "Because you were hurt," Silas said simply. "And because my daughter reminded me that even stables have room." The woman frowned, not understanding. He didn't explain. Some things needed time to unfold. "I am Ayana," she said finally. "My son is Koda." "We are." She paused, searching for words. "We are running. From men who want me dead." She held his gaze, measuring him, deciding how much to trust. "Men who want what I know." "And what do you know?" Silence stretched between them. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. Koda stirred in his sleep, murmured something, settled again. "I know where they plan to build their railroad," Ayana said at last. "And I know whose bones they will disturb when they do." Silas made breakfast. Simple fare oatmeal with dried apples, coffee strong enough to strip paint, but warm and filling. Ayana couldn't manage more than a few bites, but Koda ate everything placed in front of him, then looked hopefully for more. "When did you last have a real meal?" Silas asked quietly. 3 days ago," Ayana admitted. "Maybe 4. The running. It does not leave time for cooking." Ellie appeared from upstairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She stopped when she saw their guests awake, suddenly shy. "Good morning," she said, formal, careful. "Good morning." Ayana's voice softened. "You are Ellie. Your father spoke of you." Ellie nodded, then looked at Koda. The boy looked back. Neither spoke, but something passed between them, the wordless communication of children who recognize kindred spirits. "Can I show him the barn?" Ellie asked. "We have a cat." She just had kittens. "Ask Koda's mother." Ayana hesitated, instinct warring with practicality. Letting Koda out of her sight felt dangerous. But he was looking at her with such hope in his eyes, and he had been through so much, and he was still just a child who deserved moments of joy. "Stay close," she told him in Apache. "If you see horses coming, hide. Do not come out until I call you." Koda nodded solemnly, then scrambled down from his chair and followed Ellie to the door. They grabbed coats, Ellie's own for her Martha's old jacket, for Koda far too big, but warm, and disappeared into the white morning. Silas and Ayana sat alone in the silence they left behind. "Tell me about the railroad," Silas said. Ayana was quiet for a long moment, staring into her cup of coffee, like it held answers. When she spoke, her voice was low, controlled. "My husband was a translator, like you once were. He worked for the army at Fort Defiance. The railroad men came to the fort 6 months ago, wanting guides, wanting maps, wanting someone who knew the land between here and Santa Fe. And your husband helped them. At first." He thought. She paused, gathered herself. He thought they wanted to build fairly, to negotiate with the tribes, to find routes that would not disturb sacred places. But that wasn't what they wanted. "No." Her jaw tightened. They wanted the fastest route, the cheapest route, through lands that have held our dead for 1,000 years. "The Valley of Silver Mesa, you know it," Silas nodded. He'd passed through once years ago. Beautiful country, red rock, and ancient trees, and a sense of presence that went beyond the physical. "That valley holds the bones of my grandmother's grandmother," Ayana said, "and her grandmother before that. Back and back beyond memory. The railroad men want to blast through it, lay their iron roads across graves they do not even believe exist. And your husband tried to stop them," he told them. Showed them the burial markers, explained what the symbols meant. They laughed at him. Her hands tightened on the cup. Said they didn't care about Indian superstitions. Said progress was coming, whether we wanted it or not. And when my husband threatened to go to the newspapers to tell them what the railroad was planning, she didn't finish. Didn't need to. They killed him, Silas said. Made it look like a robbery. Bandits, they said. Wrong place, wrong time. Her voice cracked just slightly. But I saw them. Hollister's men. I saw their faces when they rode away from his body. And they saw mine. Understanding settled over Silas like a weight. That's why they're chasing you. You're a witness. I'm more than that. Ayanna reached for the leather pouch beside her bed, pulled out a folded paper worn, soft from handling. Before he died, my husband gave me this. The original survey map. Without it, the railroad cannot prove their route was authorized. Cannot claim the land they need. She unfolded it, spread it on the blanket. Silas leaned close, studied the lines and notations. The route was marked in red ink, cutting straight through the heart of the valley she had described. You could destroy it, he said. Burn it. They'd never find it. I tried. Her voice dropped. The night they killed him, I built a fire. Held this over the flames. But I couldn't do it. This paper is the last thing he touched. The last proof he lived that he tried to do right. She folded it again, pressed it against her chest. It is all I have left of him. The days passed, slowly measured in small kindnesses and smaller words. Ayanna's wound began to heal slowly, painfully, but healing nonetheless. She could sit up by the second day, stand by the third. On the fourth day, she insisted on helping with chores, despite Silas's protests, and he found her in the barn, forking hay, one-handed, while Coda played with the kittens. You're going to tear your stitches, Silas said. I'm going to lose my mind if I lie in that bed one more hour. He couldn't argue with that. He knew the feeling too well. They worked in silence for a while, the rhythm of labor filling the space where conversation might have been. It was comfortable. Silas realized more comfortable than silence had been in years. Usually, silence felt like absence, like Martha-shaped holes in the air. But this silence was different. Full, somehow. Present. You don't talk much, Ayanna observed finally. Neither do you. I am Apache. Silence is not absence for us. It is presence. It is listening. She paused, considered. You listen too. Not like most white men. They fill silences because they fear them. You let them breathe. I worked with your people for 5 years, Silas said. Learned that words are not always the best way to say things. Why did you leave the army? The question cut deeper than he expected. He set down his pitchfork, leaned against the stall, stared at nothing. I saw things, he said finally. Things I couldn't stay quiet about anymore. Raids on peaceful villages. Women and children shot because someone in Washington decided they were threats. I tried to speak up, tried to change things from inside. They didn't want to hear it. So you left. So I left. Bought this land, built this cabin, married Martha. Tried to forget. Did you forget? No. He met her eyes, saw understanding there. But I stopped watching it happen. stopped being complicit. That counted for something. Had to count for something. Ayanna nodded slowly. There is wisdom in knowing when to fight and when to walk away. My husband never learned that. He fought when he should have run. Her voice caught. I run when perhaps I should fight. You're protecting your son. That's not running. That's surviving. Is there a difference? One keeps you alive. The other keeps you human. She was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. Then she did something he didn't expect. She laughed. Small, soft, barely more than an exhale. But real. You speak like an elder, she said, in a young man's body. I'm 38. Not that young. Among my people, that is still young. Men do not become elders until they have seen 60 winters. But their eyes can hold elder wisdom before the years catch up. She touched her shoulder, wincing slightly. Thank you, Silas Brennan, for your cabin, your medicine, your silence. For seeing my son and me as people instead of problems. Thank me by healing, he said gruffly, uncomfortable with gratitude. And by staying safe. I cannot promise safety. Hollister will come eventually. The storm bought us time, nothing more. Then we'll use the time well. December 22 in. Ruby's anniversary, except her name was Ellie, and she was alive, and that was everything, and also not enough. Silas stood at Martha's grave as the sun rose, coffee growing cold in his hands. 3 winters, now, since he dug this hole. 3 years since he'd laid her in it, wrapped in the quilt she'd started making for Ellie, the one she'd never finished. The headstone was simple, Martha Brennan. 1848, 1881. Beloved wife and mother. Not enough words for what she'd been, what she'd meant. But stone had limits, and grief had none. She was beautiful. Silas turned. Ayanna stood a few feet away, wrapped in a blanket against the cold. Her wound must have been aching. The cold always made wounds ache, but she gave no sign of it. You shouldn't be out here, he said. I saw you from the window. Thought you might want company. She moved closer, studying the headstone. Beloved wife and mother. Good words. Not enough words. No. Never enough. She was quiet for a moment. I buried my husband where he fell. In the dirt by the side of the road. I could not even mark the place. His spirit wanders, searching for home. I'm sorry. The living cannot help the dead. Only remember them. She touched her leather pouch, the one that held his ashes. Silas understood now what those ashes were. I carry him with me, so he is never alone. Someday, when it is safe, I will take him to the mountains of his birth. Let his spirit rest in proper ground. That's a long way to carry grief. Grief is light compared to forgetting. I would carry it forever rather than let his memory fade. Silas understood. God help him, he understood completely. They returned to the cabin to find Ellie and Coda at the kitchen table, heads bent over paper and charcoal. The children had become inseparable over the past days, communicating through gesture and expression and the universal language of play. Coda was teaching Ellie Apache words. Ellie was teaching Coda to read. Look, Papa. Ellie held up a drawing. Koda drew his village. The picture showed tipis arranged in a circle, mountains in the background, a river running through the middle. Small figures stood around a central fire, men, women, children. A family? That's my grandmother, Koda said, pointing to one figure. She makes the best bread. And that's my cousin running horse. He taught me to track rabbits. Are they still there? Ellie asked. In the village, Koda's face clouded. He looked to his mother, uncertain how to answer. Some of them, Ayanna said carefully. Others have moved on. Ellie nodded sagely, accepting this. Children understood more than adults credited them for. They knew death wore many faces, and some questions were better left unasked. I drew something too. Ellie pulled out another paper, held it up. The picture showed 4 figures standing in front of a cabin. A tall man with dark hair, Silas. A woman with long black hair, Ayanna. A small boy, Koda. And a girl with braids, Ellie herself. Above them, in careful letters, Ellie had written family. Silas felt his throat tighten. He looked at Ayanna, saw her eyes glistening, saw her hand press against her heart. When did you draw this? He asked. Today. But I dreamed it before. Ellie's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were describing the weather. Before Mama died, I dreamed about a lady with dark hair who would come to help us. I've been waiting for her. The room went silent. Outside, wind whispered through the pines. Inside, 4 hearts beat together, drawn by circumstance, held by something deeper. It's a beautiful drawing, Ayanna said, finally. May I keep it? Ellie beamed. I made it for you. The riders came on, December 23 RD. Silas saw them first, 3 dark shapes on the ridge to the east silhouetted against the gray morning sky. They sat their horses for a long moment, watching, measuring. Then they started down the slope. Ayanna. His voice was calm, but his hand had already found the rifle. Take the children to the root cellar. Now. She didn't argue, didn't question. She gathered Koda and Ellie, the girl protesting, the boy silent with fear, and disappeared through the back door. Silas heard the cellar hatch open, hard at close. Then he was alone, standing on his porch with his Winchester in his hands, watching death ride toward him. The lead rider was a man in his 50s, well-dressed, for the frontier, clean wool coat, polished boots, hat without a single speck of dust. Garrett Hollister. Silas recognized the name from Ayanna's stories, and now he had a face to match it. The 2 men flanking him were different, hard-faced trail, worn with the cold eyes of men who had killed before and would kill again without hesitation. Professional guns. Hollister stopped 20 feet from the porch. His men fanned out on either side, hands resting casually near their holsters. Mr. Brennan. Hollister's voice was smooth, cultured. Eastern money, trying to sound Western. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't know what you're talking about. An Apache woman. Ayanna, she calls herself. Wanted for arson, theft of company property, and suspected involvement in the murder of one of my employees. Murder? Silas kept his voice flat. That's not what I heard. What did you hear that your employee was killed by men on your payroll? That his widow watched it happen. That she's been running ever since because dead witnesses tell no tales. Hollister's smile never wavered, but something hardened behind his eyes. Interesting theory. Unprovable, of course. What is provable is that she stole a survey map worth thousands of dollars to my company. I want it back. I don't have any map. Perhaps not. But she does. And she's here. We tracked her to your door. So let's make this simple. Hollister spread his hands, the picture of reasonableness. Produce the woman and the map, and we'll be on our way. You can keep the brat. Hell, you can even keep the woman if you want. I don't care about her. I just want the paper. And if I refuse, the smile sharpened. Then I'll be forced to notify the authorities that you're harboring a wanted criminal. Your property will be searched. Your daughter will be questioned. And in 3 weeks, when my railroad survey goes through official channels, your land will be condemned for the new route. Amazing how that works out. The threat was clear: cooperate or lose everything. Silas thought of Ellie in the root cellar. Thought of Coda clinging to his mother. Thought of Martha's grave on the hill and the promise he'd made at her graveside to protect what mattered, to do what was right, to be the man she believed he could be. Get off my property, he said quietly. Hollister blinked. I'm sorry you heard me. Get off my land. Take your men, take your threats, and ride out the way you came. Don't come back. You're making a mistake, Brennan. A very costly mistake. Probably. Silas raised the rifle, not pointing it at anyone yet, just making its presence known. But it's my mistake to make. And I'm making it. For a long moment, no one moved. The cold wind cut between them, carrying snow from distant peaks. Hollister's men shifted hands, twitching toward their guns. Silas waited, calm, ready. Then Hollister laughed, a short, harsh sound devoid of warmth. Fine. Have it your way. You have until Christmas Day to reconsider. That gives you 2 days to decide what your land, your daughter, your conscience are worth. He gathered his reins, turned his horse. We'll be back, Mr. Brennan. And next time we won't be asking. They rode away into the white. The root cellar was cold and dark, but Ayanna barely noticed. She sat with her arms around both children, Coda on one side, Ellie on the other, listening to the muffled sounds above. Voices. Silence. More voices. Then hoofbeats fading. The hatch opened. Light spilled down. They're gone, Silas said. Ayanna emerged first, helping the children up. Her wound throbbed. She'd moved too fast, aggravated the healing tissue, but pain was secondary now. She needed to know. What did they want the map? And you? What did you tell them? Silas met her eyes. I told them to leave, and they did for now. Hollister gave us until Christmas Day. After that, he didn't finish. Didn't need to. Ayanna felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, but shifting, making room for something she hadn't expected to feel, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel since her husband's death. Why? She asked. Why? Protect me. You could give them the map. Tell them where I am. Save yourself. Save Ellie. Why risk everything for strangers? Silas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because my wife asked me to live. really live. Not just survive, not just exist, but live, which means standing for something,